it hasn't quite been safe enough to be broadcasting to you in vision like this. The fighting that was going on in the streets around the hotel seems to have subsided for now. I've just heard a fairly distant explosion and some gunfire just a few minutes ago. In terms of that press conference from Musa Ibrahim, which I just left, it is happening in the same hotel that I'm in at the moment. Now, these figures, first of all, 376 killed. Earlier he told reporters that in confidence. He's now put the information out there. He was telling us, when he told me that in confidence earlier, that figure was not just pro-Gaddafi forces, but it was also opposition forces. It was a total figure. That was 376 killed last night. He now says that since midday today, Libya time, until about now, it's almost midnight here, yes, over 1,000 have been killed, and I think he said something like 5,000 injured. Now, if those figures are accurate, it would be, as he is saying, an absolute tragedy and a huge loss of life for this city. Now, in terms of the battles on the streets, again, very hard to read. The streets around this particular hotel at the moment appear to be quiet. There's a checkpoint. It's a pro-Gaddafi checkpoint just outside the front gate of the hotel. We have seen fireworks being fired in the distance. Don't know what that would be. We do know that there is still fighting in parts of the city because we're hearing it and we're told about it. Earlier today, Musa Ibrahim, that government spokesman I was talking about, he was saying that a couple of districts to the north and on the eastern side of the city, big, long, sustained burst of gunfire now at the moment, that two districts to the north, close to the Mediterranean coast, and to the east of the city centre, a district called Tajura, in particular, their opposition forces seem to have control of the streets, and we have that also confirmed from a source that the BBC believes to be credible. So at this stage, with several rumours circulating around about the arrest, possibly, of Colonel Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam, Saif Gaddafi, also rumours that Colonel Gaddafi's own private bodyguards have laid down their weapons. All of this unsubstantiated at the moment. I can't possibly confirm either of those two rumours. But certainly the tide is turning against Colonel Gaddafi tonight, and it looks at the moment like a fairly swift rebel advance.
Yeah, Matthew, we've always heard that Tripoli has been not just the capital of the country, but the heartland of Gaddafi's support. If that support is crumbling away, presumably the end could come pretty quickly.
Yes, remember there's also his hometown of Sirte. There was fighting in Brega as well, to the east of here today, the oil terminal there, and there the rebels were pushed back. So, you know, it's a mixed pattern across the country. I think you're right, though. If Tripoli were to fall, then that would presumably be it for the current government, for Colonel Gaddafi himself as well. And that may well explain why Musa Ibrahim has been so adamant in calling for a ceasefire, negotiations in recent hours. At the same time, I suppose we shouldn't discount the following possible scenario. Musa Ibrahim was telling me earlier that there were 65,000 professional Libyan soldiers on Colonel Gaddafi's side, inside Tripoli at the moment, preparing to defend this city. He also said that there are many volunteers, the rebels call them mercenaries, who are also willing to take up weapons and fight for Tripoli, for Colonel Gaddafi. So I suppose there is a possibility that if the rebels are able to get into parts of Tripoli from the outside, that then some of these pro-Gaddafi forces may choose then to rise up, as they have in other cities, snipers on the roofs, mortars being fired on rebel positions, and inflict heavy casualties on the advancing rebels, having, if you like, sealed them off in a part of Tripoli. That is a possible scenario, of course, so I don't think we should leap to conclusions at this stage that this rebel advance is as smooth as it is necessarily being reported right now.
Musa Ibrahim suggested that not just a ceasefire, but Colonel Gaddafi would welcome immediate negotiations with the head of the rebel National Transitional Council. Is there any chance of that happening, do you think, Matthew?
It's hard to see. I would have thought, with the rebels and the opposition forces clearly feeling that the momentum is firmly with them. You've seen those pictures that Rupert Wingfield-Hayes and Orla Guerin have been discussing and showing us. They clearly believe that they are on the verge of a significant victory, on the verge of taking Tripoli. and the overthrow of Colonel Gaddafi. I would find it very hard to see why, at this stage, they would want to negotiate with a leader, with a government that appears so much on the back foot. Again, this conflict has had twists and turns all the way through, so we shouldn't leap to conclusions. But I would have thought the fact that the opposition initially was saying that they would accept Colonel Gaddafi stepping down, this was several months ago, they would accept Colonel Gaddafi stepping down, he could stay in Libya as long as free elections were held. That was rejected by the government and the Gaddafi leadership at the time. Since then, the rebels' main discussion point, the starting point for them, has been Colonel Gaddafi and his family must get out of this country, they must leave, they must stand down from power, and then the country can start trying to heal its wounds.
Matthew, just as you say that, Reuters is reporting precisely the point you've made. Head of Libya Rebel Council says they're ready to stop fighting on the condition that Gaddafi announces his departure. As you said, that has long been their stance. What is your reading as to how that will be received by Colonel Gaddafi? Is there any chance that he'll go along with that, do you think?
I had a pretty long chat with Musa Ibrahim, the government information minister here in Tripoli earlier today, and he and other officials have been adamant that Colonel Gaddafi will not leave. Today, he solidified his reasoning for that. And the reasoning from the government's perspective, from the information minister's perspective, is the following. Colonel Gaddafi, it is said, still has widespread support. They were quoting figures of 70–80% of the population of Tripoli. I don't know, that seems pretty high to me, but certainly wide-scale support both in Tripoli and in places across the country. They argue, the government argues, that he is still a significant player here, that he has support, that he brings people along with him, and that if you were to remove him from the equation, then all those people who have been signed up to Colonel Gaddafi's cause for the last 4 decades, all of those people who have fought on his behalf, all of those people who are connected to him in some way, would immediately believe that, this is the government's argument, that they should take up weapons because they would believe that their days are numbered. They feel that the rebels are hell-bent on vengeance. They feel that the rebels are going to engage in the bloodletting of those close to Colonel Gaddafi here. And so it's the government's position that if Colonel Gaddafi were to leave the country, you would be unleashing tribal warfare, a civil war of some sort. Now, that's clearly the government perspective. There have been all these rumours that Colonel Gaddafi, in the last few days, was on a plane to Tunisia, on a plane to Venezuela. So far, absolutely no reason to believe that there is any substance to those rumours. But if this rumour earlier today, and again, there is so much out there at the moment on the internet and being reported elsewhere, if this rumour at the moment that Colonel Gaddafi's personal bodyguard has laid down its weapons, then one would have thought that he himself would either be about to be engaged in some sort of fight to the death, or he might be considering leaving the country. OK. Matthew Price, for the moment, thank you very much.
OK, well, let's go.